This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Get a whole month free at mubi.com/YaraZaid. Earlier this year, after slowly weaning myself from its addictive nature, I deleted my Twitter account. A few months later, when I did my final Q&A, the one I swore I wouldn't private but ultimately did private, sorry about that, it's the poor self-image talking, I was asked, "What happened to your Twitter?" To which I said, "Oh, I deleted it." And I didn't bother to elaborate on that at all. Saying I just deleted it is enough of an answer, a complete answer, but it's missing the reason behind my decision, the things that built up and ultimately led me to decide my life would be better without it. And when I consider all the other factors, all the bullshit, whatever you want to call it all boils down to simply this. I just didn't like the person I was on Twitter. It wasn't like I was going around insulting people, but I felt more callous, more cold, more defensive, and less like a human being. The most interesting thing is that Twitter's hellish atmosphere is no secret. People active on Twitter regularly lament the site, and it wasn't uncommon for me to see tweets from people describing Twitter as a hell site, or as a black hole where empathy goes to die. No one on Twitter ever seemed happy to be on Twitter. Everyone was miserable and everything hurt. And I was part of that, often complaining about Twitter but ultimately logging on to talk more shit or see more shit talk. It wasn't until about March or so that I realized I didn't have to be miserable. I know it seems obvious, but at the time, and especially with things as addictive as social media, it was hard to see that. So I deleted my account, and that was that. There are a lot of downsides to being offline in that way. I never know what the hell anyone is talking about. By the time I catch up to something, it's old news. And of course, I miss tweets from these guys, follow them by the way, but ultimately not being on Twitter has made me less miserable. Twitter isn't the only platform that makes me this way. Despite growing up in the age of social media, I never really got the hang of it. My sister set up my first MySpace page for me when I was just a kid, and I didn't really know what to do with it. I spent all my time on MySpace redecorating my page and choosing a different song every week. I distinctly remember having I Hate Everything About You by 3 Days Grace one day and then changing it to Dynamo Volition by Jason Mraz the next. All of my friends were immediate family members. A good thing, because I was a fucking kid. I was coming of age when social media started to become ubiquitous. Some social media platforms I used, others I didn't know anything about until they were nearing their end. That doesn't mean I didn't try to engage with social media. I had a Tumblr phase that saw all of my different stages of fangirling. When I was purely a classic punk fangirl reblogging gift sets and pictures of Karen O, Kathleen Hanna, and Susie Sue. When I was purely a cinematic fangirl reblogging gift sets of Gone Girl, Psycho, and The Usual Suspects. And even my high school K-pop phase where I retweeted everything from gift sets to FX instrumentals. But even then, I was bad at the social part of social media. I was bad at knowing what to say, when to say it, how to present myself. I mainly hid behind the things that I liked. I didn't know how to effortlessly share myself. And that's bled into my usage of social media now, which is why you rarely see me in any of my videos. Part of it, I guess, is the fear of being judged. The other part is afraid of losing what little of myself I actually know and have. I've always been afraid of losing the pieces of myself that I share with people, and in the advent of social media, with the world. In a way, Twitter had come to represent that great fear. As I used the platform, I shared small bits of myself, a selfie here, a mention of my family there, and then eventually I felt like I wasn't me anymore, or that I wasn't mine anymore. I know it sounds ridiculous and I can't explain it. In my brain, it felt like with every bit of myself I gave away, I made it easier for myself to be influenced negatively by others. The best thing I can compare it to, oddly, is a celebrity relationship. So recently, Kristen Stewart did an interview where she briefly spoke about her past relationship with Robert Pattinson. She explained that part of the reason it failed was because the world wanted them to be together so badly that they no longer felt like they belonged to themselves. They weren't theirs, they were everybody's. People wanted me and Rob to be together so badly that our relationship was made into a product. It wasn't real life anymore, and that was gross to me. It's not that I want to hide who I am or hide anything I'm doing in my life. It's that I don't want to become a part of a story for entertainment value. Obviously, I am a far cry from these people. I don't have thousands of eyes on me, thank God. I don't feel that pressure from the world. What I felt instead was a small-scale version where I feared sharing anything about me or about my life that I cared about deeply would compromise the existence or the truthfulness of that thing. Or worse, that it would be easier for me to mold myself to the liking of others. If that doesn't make sense, I'm sorry. I've written this part like 12 times in an attempt to clarify my thoughts on how social media tends to make me feel, because again, this does not apply to everyone. In large doses, that is. In small doses, I love social media, because as much as Black Mirror or any of the movies I'm about to mention may paint social media as being kind of a bad thing, let's not deny its good qualities. I have a platform because of social media, and I've been given a lot of life-changing opportunities to do things I've always dreamt of doing because of social media, and that's not something to scoff at. I just felt like this video needed more context, and I also wanted it to be clear that these are my feelings about social media. They do not need to be yours, and I don't want anyone to walk away from this thinking the internet is the devil. Too often when we're faced with new technology, we're quick to go to either extreme, that the new technology is evil or that the new technology will bring us closer to a utopia. The reality is more complicated. Usually it does veer a bit closer to the dystopian, but in this video I'm going to talk about how these three movies, Ingrid Goes West, Spree, and Zola, reflect my own experiences with social media, how I identify with the film's themes regarding the need for connection and perfection, the need for attention, and even the duplicity of the platforms we find ourselves addicted to. Okay, enough about me, let's talk about movies. Of all the movies I'm going to mention in this video, Ingrid Goes West has a special place in my heart. Not only do I thoroughly enjoy the movie and the perfect casting, the comedy, the characters, but at the time, 2017, I really identified with what was going on in the story. I was at a point in my life in 2017 where I was extremely depressed. Now, I've struggled with depression before, plenty of times, but the year of 2017 stands out as one of my worst depressive episodes to date. I constantly felt like my life was going nowhere. I described it as me being a boulder sat on the edge of a stream. As the world moved down, picking up all sorts of things along the way, I was in the same position, watching the world change and the people around me grow, move on. And I just felt stunted. As weird as this is going to sound, I really fucking identified with Ingrid. No, I didn't pepper spray someone I barely knew for not inviting me to their wedding, but I too was very depressed, not living my life, looking at others live their lives and feeling really fucking lonely. My friends were busy making something of themselves, which felt really good to see. Like, on one hand, I was really proud of them for taking major steps toward their dreams and doing what had to be done. On the other hand, I was jealous that they even knew how to start because I didn't. I still don't. Why do you think I'm on YouTube? Ingrid, too afraid and too debilitatingly depressed to live her own life, not knowing where to start, becomes obsessed with the lives of others through social media. She's also so starved for a relationship, not strictly a romantic one, that the shortest of interactions with people lead her to projecting her ideals onto them. Before the story begins, a character named Charlotte reaches out to Ingrid to extend her sympathy. Ingrid's mother has just died after being sick for a long time. Ingrid, neck deep in grief and just having lost who she described as being her best friend, is eager for this extension of sympathy to be something more. She doesn't seem to realize, or maybe she doesn't want to realize, that she and Charlotte aren't friends, but Ingrid's perception of the relationship being more clear to her than the reality, she's understandably hurt when she's not invited to Charlotte's wedding, and she lashes out like this.
Congratulations. Inviting me, you fucking cunt!
This movie is like Single White Female, except we're getting inside the mind of the single white female in question. We're understanding her on a level where her actions, while not necessarily condoned, become comprehensible when viewed through her distorted perspective. We totally understand that Ingrid's obsession with Charlotte is wrong, but as the story unfolds and we see her life, we kind of get why this happens. After the incident at the wedding, Ingrid is taken to a facility where she is distanced from technology and social media. California, where she learns how to control her anger, how to be in the moment, and how to get more in touch with herself. After a little while, she's released, but it's pretty clear that the facility has done little, if anything, to help her understand the actions that led to her attacking Charlotte in the first place. It's demonstrated by the fact that throughout the story, Ingrid continues to write to Charlotte, who has a restraining order against her. Shortly after being released, she immediately falls back into the habit of obsessing with people through social media. Her latest object of affection is Taylor Sloan, a glamorous California girl whose lifestyle Ingrid desperately wants to have. One interaction with Taylor on Instagram leads Ingrid to making the life-changing decision to travel to California and not only start a new life, but to meet Taylor and become her best friend. For a little while, this plan works. She has one encounter with Taylor, which leads to her following her home and finding out where she lives. She then steals Taylor's dog just so she can return it and befriend her. She takes pictures of all the products in Taylor's bathroom, takes Taylor to her house in Joshua Tree, dyes her hair the same color as Taylor's, and does what she can to not just be Taylor, but to be best friends with Taylor. Ingrid has a sense of detachment, unable to connect with the world on her own, having to rely on the world as defined by the personalities she attaches herself to via Instagram. It's their view of the world she wants to live in. The real world, as it is, doesn't seem to interest Ingrid much. What she wants is not just the lives of people like Charlotte and Taylor. What she wants is not just their friendship. It's to have their view of the world, a world that she is only viewing through the ever-positive filter of Instagram, where everything is all great all the time. After discovering Taylor's Instagram, Ingrid spends the whole day consuming every picture, every video, every caption, every hashtag. She wants to have a life like that. Her own life is empty and sad, especially since her mother's death. How refreshing would it be to be someone else for a change? Someone whose life is perpetually sunny. It isn't until the end that Ingrid realizes how deceitful social media is. Social media is designed for people to share the highlights of their lives and cover up the not so pretty parts, to showcase their relationships through date nights and Valentine's Day, not to express how difficult marriage is, which is the case for Taylor. Ingrid, under the impression that Taylor and her husband Ezra are in a perfect, worry-free marriage, is utterly confused when she finds out that they have issues like everybody else. For instance, Ezra doesn't have any way of getting income and worries about money all the time, or how Ezra hates Taylor's need to put every aspect of their life on public display. In the end, Ingrid feels betrayed by these flaws in Taylor's life. Weirdly, almost as betrayed as Taylor feels after discovering Ingrid has been stalking her the whole time. She's upset that Taylor feigns perfection to the public, but it must be said that it's the nature of social media to reward performance in the act of playing things up. Life in general rewards performance. Sociologist Irving Goffman theorized the presentation of the self and the performance of identity in human interaction. When an individual enters the presence of others, they commonly seek to acquire information about him, or to bring into play information about him already possessed. They will be interested in his general socioeconomic status, his conception of self, his attitude toward them, his confidence, his trustworthiness, etc. Although some of this information seems to be sought almost as an end in itself, there are usually quite practical reasons for acquiring it. Information about the individual helps to define the situation, enabling others to know in advance what he will expect of them and what they may expect of him. Informed in these ways, the others will know how best to act in order to call forth a desired response from him. When an individual plays a part, he implicitly requests his observers to take seriously the impression that is fostered before them. They are asked to believe that the character they see actually possesses the attributes he appears to possess, that the task he performs will have the consequences that are implicitly claimed for it, and that, in general, matters are what they appear to be. In line with this, there is the popular view that the individual offers his performance and puts on his show for the benefit of other people. The dichotomy between the characters, especially Taylor and Ingrid, is the cognitive dissonance experienced by users of Instagram or any social media platform for that matter, like the Twitter users who call it a house site but love it enough to log in every day, in part perhaps because of social media addiction. Matt Spicer, the director, wanted to make the film because he and co-screenwriter David Branson Smith absolutely loved social media, especially Instagram. They understood and appreciated the value that the connectivity of Instagram provides, but they also recognized the odd nature of it, that how we consume the lives of people we follow is partly an effort to have their lives, to have their vibes. Oh, that's a bar, writing that down. Even before the internet, we consumed interviews and articles about our favorite celebrities in the hopes that we could do what they do, be how they are, because there's something in them we admire and want to have in ourselves. Instagram provides what used to be limited to magazine articles to millions, and its accessibility makes it both a useful tool and a hazardous weapon. Because we have closer access to influencers and even the celebrities on social media, we feel it's more possible to emulate them. And lines become blurred. Their lives are no longer private. Their lives are for public consumption. More than anything, Ingrid's isolation was the thing I identified with the most. We're in an age of constant connectivity. As the internet and social media began to take shape, their use became ubiquitous and even necessary. The world expanded with opportunity, but it also compressed itself. Everything felt closer than it ever had. Ironically, the accessibility to people and to forging new relationships had the potential to make the loneliest of us feel even more lonely. Even if we do manage to talk to someone over the internet and connect through shallow commonalities, the isolation persists because the connection is fragile. In 2020, when the world shut down and everyone was hopping on Zoom and FaceTime, it became clear that while it's great that we do have the kind of technology that lets us see the faces of those we love, and also our bosses too, it was no replacement for the comfort of face-to-face interaction, of being touched physically and emotionally, or just enjoying the presence of another person. For Ingrid, she's not only craving these touches and craving these connections, but her inability to go about forging her own connections keeps her in a constant state of want and need, exacerbated by the images she sees on social media of people hanging out with friends, lovers, and generally being happy. Ultimately, Ingrid just wants to have a friend. It's just that she has a funny idea of how one can go about getting one. Eugene Kotlyarenko's Spree isn't the best film. Its messaging on social media is pretty one-sided, kind of demeaning and slightly dystopian, but to its credit, that's exactly what I would expect from a satire of its ilk. As I mentioned earlier, oftentimes people have extreme reactions to things. Whether it's technology or art, some people perceive these things as being wholly good or wholly bad, failing to appreciate the nuances or complexities the thing has to offer. Too often, people write off social media as a thing that's inevitably going to ruin your life, kind of like the 2000s PSAs about cyber stranger dangers or that one Jason Bateman movie from 2012. But it is a satire, so I'm not going to nitpick too much. Spree is about a rideshare driver, Kurt, played very well and very brilliantly by Joe Keery. Kurt has been trying to gain an internet audience for years to no avail. All he wants is to go viral. His fixation on social media is so over the top, intentionally of course, that he says things like this.
Are you seeing all these homeless people? It's pathetic. Zero social media presence. They don't even care that the whole world doesn't even know that they exist. If I ran over their tent and killed them all, no one would even care right now.
And this.
No one even reposts your stuff anymore.
Kurt is obviously a played-up exaggeration of the effects that the internet's attention economy can have on a person. Fame has always been this elusive, highly coveted thing. The paparazzi culture of the 2000s was an extension of the celebrity culture that fed off the public's lust for fame and fortune. Everybody wants their 15 minutes, and if Andy Warhol was right, and it's becoming increasingly obvious that he was, everyone will get their 15 minutes. And if everybody's famous, is anybody famous? That's a whole nother can of worms, why do you even say that? In Ingrid Goes West, Taylor's need to broadcast her life is about more than keeping up a brand for Instagram. It's about selling a life, a vision of the world that Ingrid eagerly buys into. And it's also about making that life exciting for herself. Taylor doesn't see potential friendships in people. She sees them as opportunities for social gain, for a worthwhile selfie. Her life isn't lived if it's for her only. It has to be the world's, because if no one sees it, did it happen? Or to put it more eloquently,
well, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to see it, like, does it even actually fall, dude? No.
The attention economy isn't limited to corporations doing absolutely everything they can to have the precious commodity that is your eyeballs. It also reflects the individual's need or lust for attention in an online space.
You see, guys, the thing about Kurt is he really wants attention.
With the correlation between extensive social media use and our attention spans, having the attention of people in a virtual space has become truly special, with big and small businesses using advertising, with users going going out of their way to stand out. Everything online is demanding our attention. So for someone to have it, even if only for 15 minutes, is huge. For Kurt, living his life in the public eye determines his existence. And once he gets the audience he's been so desperate for, he's willing to do anything he can to hold on to them so they don't stray. For him, this translates to a lot of murder and chaos, but we've seen it in less extreme cases, and we see it all the time. We see it in the influencers who say and do detestable things because all attention is good attention, even if it's millions of people saying they hate you. At least they're thinking about you, right? However, the attention we get from the internet and from the world, period, is the vacuous sort. It's fleeting and emotionless. Gaining likes and followers is like a game. We get likes and we feel rewarded and we want to get more likes. It activates the pleasure center of our brain the same way that a nice fudge brownie does, or the way playing slots in Vegas does. We get rewarded and we keep going and going to get another reward, to get another rush of sweet, sweet dopamine. As this practice continues, we start to relate likes and follows with happiness and, worse, self-worth. In Tolentino's Trick Mirror, a collection of essays, she wrote about every possible aspect of the current landscape of social media with the eye and the internet. She wrote about how social media is designed to keep us coming back through outrage and dissatisfaction. In front of the timeline, we exhibit classic reward-seeking lab rat behavior, the sort that's observed when lab rats are put in front of an unpredictable food dispenser. Rats will eventually stop pressing the lever if their device dispenses food regularly, or not at all. But if the lever's rewards are rare and irregular, the rats will never stop pressing it. In other words, it is essential that social media is mostly unsatisfying. This is what keeps us scrolling. Spree also recognizes our weird relationship with social media, where we are completely aware of the hold it has on us, completely aware of its downsides, but also struggle to tear ourselves away from it. There's a character in Spree named Jessie Adams. She's a comedian who's quite popular on Instagram. Her famous saying is, "All eyes on me, I want to be seen." Subtle. At the end of the movie, Jessie seems to become frustrated with the nature of social media, the desperation of being given attention, and she declares she's done. But in a montage at the very end of the movie set to "I Will Follow Him" by Peggy March, we see that she returns to social media upon the expansive growth of her popularity. Even when we want to quit these platforms, we often find that we can't. This isn't a problem brought on by social media. Social media was made by humans, driven by humans, and thrives because of humans engaging with the platform. This is the kind of world we built, the world that already existed, now made larger than life through its immediacy. Almost inescapable if you're not online, and if you're not online, you're missing out on a lot. That's how I still feel after leaving Twitter. I'm only occasionally active on Instagram, and even then I try not to stay on for longer than 3 minutes. And most of the time I have no idea what's going on, which can be frustrating. Fortunately though, I don't feel like I don't exist without it. That's where me and Kurt and the thousands of others who have gone on digital detoxes, which were up over 300% last year, differ. But I do have one thing in common with Kurt. I too blast my own music in the car and ask anyone who gets in if they fuck with it. This next movie, Zola, is very special. While not directly being a movie about social media, it's a movie that best understands social media, probably because it was based on a Twitter thread. People laugh at the idea of Zola being based on a Twitter thread, but we must begin to appreciate the brilliance and the insightful qualities to that original thread. Isaiah King is the kind of storyteller that I aspire to be. I remember seeing the Zola thread as it was going viral, me and all my friends eagerly engaging with the story. It was all we could talk about. Previously, I talked about the nature of the internet and how it demands your attention at every turn. Sometimes it's hard to stay engaged in one story or one article because there's a dozen other things pulling at your eyeballs. But honey, we could not look away from this story. I think that's the thing that any storyteller wants to do for people, to have them not only engaged, but entertained and invested in the story that you're telling. It's hard to do it, and Isaiah did it on a platform where long-form stories are scarcely encouraged. King's command of language invites you into her world without talking down to you, keeping the pace of the story flowing nicely and keeping her humor well intact. I don't care what anyone says, it caught the attention of thousands of people for a reason. Let's not pretend King doesn't know how to tell a damn good story. Because Zola is based on a Twitter thread, its relationship to social media is inherent. Unlike Ingrid Goes West or Spree, it's not directly focused on the usage of social media. Of course, you see characters super engaged on their phones. The Twitter notification sound is implemented a few times.
Damn, bitch, you got perfect titties. I wish I had titties like that. They look just like little apples.
Thank you.
But Zola is focused more on persona than anything. It's focused on the presentation of the self, the contrast between who we are and what we're feeling and how we're presenting ourselves in online spaces. If you go into Zola having read the original thread, or if you just listen to Taylor Page's hilarious quips through voiceover, you're made privy to the humor Zola is dictating about the situation. But as we see the situation begin to unfold, we also see her fear and anxiety, her utter disbelief at what's happening to and around her. But none of that seeps through her narration, which we know is taken from tweets. It doesn't seep through the self she presents to the online world. Even when Stephanie takes the reins for a brief segment to tell her side of the story, it presents a new version of herself that she wants the world to believe, a version that is God-fearing and holy.
She's like, well, who do you fuck with? And I was like, I fuck with Jesus, my Lord and Savior.
Like Ingrid Goes West and like Spree, Zola encapsulates the busy business of being in virtual spaces. Online, you have the chance to be whoever you want to be. A new profile is a blank slate. Who do you want to be here? How do you want to be here? And then your only task is to make your version of the truth presentable and palatable. Make the persona you create irrefutable. The presentation of the self isn't something that strictly happens online. The Irving Goffman quote from earlier is an excerpt from The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life, a book published in 1956. In real life, we present ourselves very differently depending on who we're talking to. The way I talk to my niece is not the way I talk to my best friend, and the way I talk to my best friend is not the way I talk to my grandmother. Because we're always in performance mode depending on who we're interacting with. The irony of social media is that sometimes our online persona are closer to our truer selves. In a way, the advent of the internet and forums made it easier for some people to present themselves as they were and not as they allowed themselves to be in the presence of others. Our online personas aren't strictly reality, but in some ways they are the closest things to our real selves. I talk more in my videos than I ever do in real life, where I'm known amongst my friends as being a tight-lipped wallflower, but some of the things I analyze in these videos are my deepest thoughts, things I've reflected on for a while. In a way, the way I'm presenting myself in these videos online is a more intimate portrait of who I really am. On the other hand, we also have a tendency to exaggerate or embellish, just as Isaiah King did with her original thread. She admitted to Rolling Stone magazine that some elements were a touch embellished to add to its already growing entertainment value. Just as we embellish our truths online, on the gram, and tweets that end up on r/thathappened. This is just what Shirley Lee picked up on after viewing Zola. In a review for The Atlantic, Lee wrote, "Being online means being part of a chaotic abyss of conflicting half-truths, but it also means indulging in the ability to tell a story exactly the way you want to. There is a twisted comfort in turning anything, even trauma, into a digital anecdote. Zola captures our reliance on our online personas as coping mechanisms, something that I think everyone can relate to. You know how when tragedy strikes, it's easier to joke about that than to sit with your feelings? Recently, there was a big death in my family, and my mom and I joked about how it happened at such an inconvenient time. It was a stupid joke, but in the moment, it sort of helped us come to terms with it. Just last year, when there was another big death in my family, I didn't tell anyone online. Not my patrons, not anyone on Instagram, not on Twitter, because I wanted to have those platforms as a means of escaping the grief, so that I didn't have to think about it. I would just fall into my online persona and forget for a few minutes how sad my offline self really was, how lost and confused. We see Zola doing that throughout the film. Her narrated tweets contrast with her emotional state during the movie's dramatic and terrifying moments. Sometimes it's comforting to turn a terrifying story into a hilarious one, exaggerating details and making something entertaining out of something that could have been, or in fact was, very traumatic. Zola, as well as being the wildest story, is a movie that understands the double-edged sword of persona. We present ourselves as one way online, and for whatever reason, that's the way people perceive us as being all the time. If we always talk a big talk, we're always bold and bad, people have a tough time believing we have any sort of vulnerability, and vice versa. And if you're the class clown, people think everything you say is a joke. A fine example.
It's because my dad passed away about a year ago, and I had a box of what nigga you laughing?
In this way, Bravo truly understands the complexity of social media. The good, the bad, the entertaining, the troubling. She sees it and translates it on screen as the gray space that it is, noting that it can often be a source of stress, but sometimes a place of repose. My relationship with social media is complicated. On one hand, I'm terrible at it. I still struggle with taking a good selfie. It takes like 10 hours, which is why I never have any pictures of myself. On the other hand, a bulk of my formative years, or the Tumblr years, were dedicated to losing myself in online platforms where I felt like I was being introduced to things and to people who really got me, who made me feel more comfortable growing into myself. It's social media that let me connect to people like Ilana, Aqua, Princess, Audrey, and Hannah, all of whom are wonderful people who are a joy to talk to and who have inspired me greatly. Without social media, can I honestly say I would be where I am today, about to quit YouTube? No, wait, in these movies, with the exception of Spree, the social media platforms aren't the bad guys. The individuals who use them aren't the bad guys. They both take note of the pros, the cons, the isolation, the connection, everything going hand in hand. Harmony in tandem with chaos, because that's how humans are. And since humans drive the internet, that's how social media will be. I'm super interested in seeing more stories about the internet that don't focus on the apps alone or on the complex humans who use them, but also on the corporations preying on us through surveillance capitalism, because human attention is the hot new commodity. Oh wait, that's Ron's gone wrong. Anyway, that's the end of the video. That's my relationship with social media that 2 out of 3 of these movies really understand and the other one sort of gets. I'm done. Bye! Mubi is a curated streaming service, a place to watch beautiful, interesting, incredible cinema. Every day, Mubi premieres a new film. From iconic directors to emerging auteurs, there is always something new to discover. With Mubi, each and every film is hand-selected. It's like your own personal film festival, streaming anytime, anywhere. Of the numerous streaming services there are in the world, Mubi has easily become my favorite. Last year, when Outside was closed, I still had the option of having my world become expanded by way of spellbinding movies, many of which I had never heard of. That's my favorite thing about Mubi. It gives a platform to movies both new and old that don't quite have the appreciation or the attention that they deserve. For example, The Legend of the Stardust Brothers. I hadn't heard of that until earlier this year when it was Mubi's film of the day, and since watching it, it's become one of my favorite movies ever. It's like it was tailor-made for exactly my taste, and it blows my mind thinking about how long I might have gone in my life without knowing it existed. But today, the film that I want to recommend is Werner Herzog's Lo and Behold, Reveries of the Connected World. Werner's like the best living documentarian in the world, and in this 2016 film, he explores technological progress and our growing dependency on the online world. Like most of his works, it's well made and thought-provoking. So if venturing out to find movies that are exactly made for you, or watching some Werner Herzog documentaries sounds good, you can try Mubi for free for 30 days at mubi.com/YaraZaid. That is mubi.com/YaraZaid for a whole month of great cinema for free. Thank you guys so much for watching this one. It was really fun to make. I was already doing a lot of reading about the internet and social media shortly after I left Twitter, because I was trying to understand why it was making me feel the way it was making me feel. And then, I don't know, all of a sudden last month I thought that could be neatly implemented into some of these movies, so that's how that came about. The last video I'm going to post this year will be my list of favorites, favorite movies, favorite shows, because I actually did watch some shows this year. Aren't you proud of me? And after that, I'm going to be going on a hiatus. So, see you fucks sometime in the future, maybe, if I don't know, whatever. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. YouTube's been fun. Bye.